What's been your biggest challenge in the respect of your journey so far?
That's another deep one, Carl. I can now see where the
I'm glad you
psychology
like my
background.
questions.
Yeah, they're very good questions. They're very good questions. They're kind of a little bit disarming. I wasn't expecting them, but that's
Hey everyone, greetings to you from Tipperary to wherever in the world you might be. Welcome to the Right Coach podcast with myself, Carl.J. Ashley. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first Right Coach podcast of 2026. We're delighted to introduce Jeremy Murphy at JM Agency. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, Carl. Looking forward to the New Year festivities, New Year celebrations.
Yeah, we'll see the in with the new and out with the old and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
But of course, it's only the beginning of the calendar year for anyone that has any relationship with the ancient ways and the indigenous ways. We're obviously still deep in midwinter, and the new year doesn't actually start until around March.
Exactly. You always have to put that caveat in. It's the Gregorian calendar, and with all the sort of caveats and limitations that come with that.
This is very much hibernation time,
Yeah.
and yeah. But we'll make the best of it. We'll make the best of it. It's not too cold, is it?
I find it a little cold to be honest. I think it's very dry though in Ireland at the moment. So I'm in Kerry, I'm in the southwest, and it's a bit nippy outside, but it's dry, and you get a lovely bit of winter sunshine today, which was nice. So I don't mind that kind of nippy, fresh weather.
Mm.
But it is a bit cold.
So, without any further ado, won't you tell us who are you and what do you do?
So, Carl, I set up Jam Agency in 2018, initially as an editing service. So I was freelance editor. And what that entailed is I would take manuscripts from authors, I would read the manuscripts cover to cover, give them feedback, suggestions on how to improve the text. And it really grew from there. I saw a niche working more extensively with local authors. I was based here in Kerry in the southwest,
Hmm.
and I felt that the a lot of the local authors needed a little bit more than the editing service. They needed more comprehensive publishing service that would include design as well. So I expanded the team. I work with other professionals, and it grew from there. And now we offer there's two channels really. If you're interested in self-publishing, we offer a comprehensive book publishing package that includes high quality design and editing and management of the printing and management of distribution of the book. So it's a comprehensive publishing package that's tailored for authors who self-publish. That's one channel. And if you're interested in traditional publishing, we work with you closely to get your manuscripts professionally edited and up to a standard that's ready for submission. And in some cases, we also assist the author with approaching publishers. So that's really the story of the business in a nutshell. It started off very modestly. It was just me freelancing. I was back home. I had it was the middle of a recession, um, and I tried my hand at editing. I did a little bit of it in college, and authors the feedback initially was really really good. So it really evolved from there, and I saw a niche for a more comprehensive publishing service. So that's really how the business grew.
And were you always passionate about writing and books? Was it always a thing that you had in mind as a professional career, or did you just kind of tell me how you got into doing what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was always interested in books, certainly. So I just finished my master's in university. So I did a master's in philosophy. And then after that, as probably typically happens with people who do philosophy degrees. I wasn't entirely sure the next step. Uh,
Well, hang on a second. You could talk about the oh gosh, let's say the ontological and epistemological assets of Kant and Schopenhauer and Hume and Nietzsche in the jacuzzi with people for sure, but
yeah,
it doesn't put food on the table or pay the bills, right?
it doesn't know, and unless you are entrepreneurial enough to create a very high-end consultancy service where you can find a client who's willing to pay you a lot for talking to them about Schopenhauer and Nietzsche in the jacuzzi. I've often wondered, is such a service there? But unless you can do that, I think you do have to get something more, do something a little bit more vocational. Yeah. So yeah, I was in that dilemma. I was sort
I'm
of
not
in the
surprised. Yeah, I got a degree in psychology and philosophy and found myself equally redundant and promptly got a job dealing blackjack and roulette in a casino at the age of 23, which I could have got a job as a dealer when I was 16, apparently. And tell me before we go any further, which philosophers made an impact on you, or who would you regard as your favorite philosophers, or what philosophy did you enjoy?
yeah. Well, I wasn't prepared for these questions, Carl. This is interesting.
Yeah,
Well, enjoy is probably the wrong word. I think you know,
tolerate.
to tolerate or sort of which ones disabuse me of my illusions or something like that, or disillusion me about life. I think would probably be a more apt way of putting it. I think I did 19th, 20th century German philosophy. I think as a graduate student, I was really absorbed in the likes of Nietzsche, Heidegger, Kant at the time. But increasingly, as I get older,
Wittgenstein.
sorry,
Wittgenstein,
exactly,
the guys in
exactly.
Austria as well. Yeah.
He was in Austria and spent a lot of time in Britain and sort of became the shining light of analytic philosophy, but probably kept that sort of dark continental imagination, which makes him such an enigmatic figure. But certainly, yeah. And I think lately I've been more interested in Greek philosophy, actually.
There
So,
was a Scottish commentator called Macaulay who famously quoted about Socrates, "The more I read of him, the less I wonder that they poisoned him."
yes, well, yeah, I can imagine. It's he won't be he wasn't the first or the last dissident to be poisoned. Um, and I think there is probably truth that philosophers can do something right if they're upsetting people in power.
One of the greatest Greek philosophers was Pythagoras, who famously set up his own mystery school in was it the south of Italy? They all went off to Egypt to train. They went to Egypt to study the mystery schools there, and Pythagoras famously created his own mystery school in Italy, in the south of Italy, in Sicily, and apparently didn't speak to any of his students for the first 5 years.
Wow.
They had to earn the right of
It's,
sitting with him for 5 years before they got to hear from him.
well, did they ask for a refund? I wonder. It's
Can you imagine? Yeah.
well, it solves the human resource problem of how to sort of interact with students. Anyway, that's
Well, Pythagoras was quite something because we all kind of heard of him through learning maths at school and trigonometry, but
sure. Yeah.
he was much more highly regarded than being a mathematician and sacred geometry and was a part of his philosophy and he was a philosopher, but by right.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they demarcated the subjects as uh, finely as we do today. I think they did a little, they dabbled in everything. They were kind of more men and women of learning who sort of had broad interests. That there weren't sort of specialization the way there is today. And I think another Greek philosopher Aristotle probably bears some responsibility for that, putting the subjects in boxes. This is metaphysics,
The
this is
doctrine of the
geometry.
mean. Aristotle could have said to have championed mediocrity, Jeremy.
Yeah, the Golden Mean. Yeah, I think actually one of the books, and you did hint that you'd ask my favorite books. One of the books I'm gonna recommend if you get to that is a modern book about Aristotle, not one of Aristotle's own, which are not in an integral state. But I think yeah, he can be. You can argue he's been misinterpreted a little bit, but yeah, he was probably a little bit more level-headed than some other Greek philosophers. Yeah,
So let's move away from highfalutin talk of Anaximander and Diogenes and all the
sure.
rest of them, and move on to your three favorite books. Yourself. I always like to ask people that are in the sort of nature of the work we do. We're helping writers, we're helping authors, and authors that want to get published. But who would be your favorite authors yourself? What books would you like, and what would you recommend to anyone um, from your own personal point of view?
Yeah, it's a really good, really tough question, Carl. Maybe all the good questions are tough questions. Um, and I like the way you've asked me three. Like it's really painful to be asked to name one, and at least that's just torture. But yeah, if I was going to desert island, I had to put three in the rucksack. I wanted to be democratic about it. So one fiction, maybe if we can stretch it to four, maybe two fiction, one philosophy, one
We'll allow it.
non.
We'll
We'll
allow
allow
it.
it, yeah. But certainly, I love Updike as a writer, I must say. And I don't read a lot of fiction, partly because of I'm just too busy. It could also be you're just not in that headspace. You get a bit older, but when I read a lot of fiction, I loved Updike as a writer, and I'd nearly recommend his first one, Rabbit Run, set in 1960s America, Pennsylvania to be Pacific, and I just the prose is exquisite, beautifully crafted, and I love the way he chronicles um, the contemporary U.S. through the perspective of a very ordinary man, and manages to see and grapple with themes like death, religion, love through that perspective. I
What's
think
the
it's
name of
really
the author again?
so John Updike. It's called Rabbit Run.
John Updike and Rabbit Run. That's a new one on me. We'll put all of these in the chat in the comments
Yeah, no,
underneath
no,
in the
do
on the
please. It's
YouTube.
well recommended. So he's kind of considered in the later 20th century to be himself and Philip Roth were sort of the exemplars of the American novel. But I keep going back to him. I love again as a prose stylist, and
This was
just these
before
characters,
Jack Kerouac and the more kind of Rhodes type
yeah,
authors and
and they're
movies.
good too. And they're similar generation. Kerouac was
Steinbeck.
Canadian. He was Quebec, I think. But yeah, they're good too. And yeah, like American literature is fascinating. The American mind, their just the freshness, the newness of American prose when a lot of European literature was getting a bit stale and understandably so post-war. Definitely, a lot of people went to United States for inspiration, for direction. But yeah, no, I definitely recommend that one.
As kids
Uh,
at school, we were forced to read Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if that
yeah,
falls within a similar genre of American writers.
I think it
Probably a
would.
bit sooner.
Yeah, see, there's so many facets. Like she was a contemporary of Truman Capote. And I think her works certainly would, yeah. But again, it's so broad. There's such breadth. There's such eclecticism there. Um, but so yeah, as a work of fiction, I would recommend that. And the first Rabbit book, there's four of them. That's a good place to start.
Okay. So the Aristotle book you mentioned, what was the author there?
So I'd recommend. for a book on contemporary philosophy, I'd recommend Alasdair MacIntyre's After Virtue.
Okay.
He was a Scottish philosopher. I think he was Church of Scotland background, converted to Catholicism. Actually, in his youth, there was a brief flirtation with Marxist socialism, then converted later to Catholicism. But the biographical details are irrelevant. I think the book itself is very compelling. I think the overall argument is that we are caught in the Western world in an individualistic, atomistic paradigm, and the whole language of ethics, of being good, of doing the right thing, are inescapably entangled with that individualistic mentality. He says he's looking back to how the Greeks taught about virtue and how they taught completely different about these fundamental questions of how to be good, to do the right thing, and so forth. So
This is
it's
interesting now because I only yesterday listened to an audiobook of The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli.
yeah,
And that's very relevant to what you've said there. And his sort of way of addressing these things was looking at it from the level of the state and, the decisions and
sure.
things, decisions taken and the phenomena affecting those decisions when it comes to staying in power and appeasing people. And suppose that was Plato's angle with the Republic, which we can assume was Plato, where he's talking about justice being the harmony of things in the individual, but that being the micro, the macro being the state level where, the soldiers harmonize with the philosophers, harmonize with the workers, and this idea of the harmony of the state, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I think the state, like any other institution, has a history. You can trace it back. There is a modern spin on it. Um, like even the word religion, I think is a Latin term. It doesn't have a Greek translation. It means bounding. In the original Latin meaning, it means bounding. It means bounding humanity to God. But there's also a hint at the role of a state or an intermediary, the state being an intermediary between God and humanity. Um, to be honest, I haven't read The Prince. Always wanted to. He's a fascinating figure, and it's a fascinating period.
Yeah, I was curious. It was brought to my curiosity. I was chatting to someone last week who we the word Machiavellian came into the conversation, and it always had quite negative connotations about someone who was maybe morally unscrupulous. And so I thought, well, I better investigate the philosophy of Machiavelli and see
Yeah,
is it independent of right and wrong and morals and being put this judgment of negativity on it. But I was surprisingly, yeah, I was kind of surprised that it's somewhat unwarranted and unjustified
mm.
that he's perceived with negativity and some level of immorality. What he's talking about is the way if you're running a state, you may need to break promises because the running of the state takes priority over appeasing people and keeping promises on a level. And so if you're talking about survival and at the state level, it's a whole different ball game to the individual level. But Aristotle, as a pupil of Plato, totally departed from a lot of what Plato's works were about. He had very much his own identity and was a bit of a maverick when it came to Greek philosophers, I believe.
Yeah, I would suspect so. And it's hard as well because there's not a lot of contemporary historical records to sort of reflect views about him among his contemporaries. But Machiavelli, I think, was often being realistic. I think
Right.
he was trying to give a realistic account of how to succeed. And I think I think it is a bit unfair. He has been a bit unfairly defamed that the the adjective Machiavellian is invariably negative, and
You'd even
denotes.
hear it in football commentary where they're
You
describing a
do
soccer match and then
a
they talk
soccer
about the
match, and
dark arts
somebody
and
exactly.
Machiavellian this and that. And anyway,
Exactly. Someone has a really, prone to make really cynical fouls or something, or
so coming back to your own books, you said you couldn't pick three, you felt four.
yeah. So there's so many great books to read.
Hmm.
Fiction again. I think Thomas Mann. Again, I read him when I was quite young. Stayed with me. I think maybe to start, I think I'd recommend Buddenbrooks. His first magnum opus, epic novel. While it is a family saga, it has the it has a lot of the tendencies of modernist writing at the time. Again, the prose is exquisite, and again, it grapples with a lot of the themes you'd see in Joyce, in Proust: isolation, estrangement, um, debt of traditional religious beliefs and so forth. But again, I think it manages to be realistic, but also a very, very well developed vision. Offers readers a very well developed vision of humanity. A really compelling book. Would strongly recommend it.
Cool. So
So
Thomas
yeah,
Mann.
I think Thomas Mann. Yeah. Um. So they're three. I'd certainly put them in the rucksack. If I was going to a desert island.
Anybody else come to mind?
Well, there's some like Paul Theroux is a very great writer. Many of his travel books. Um, there was a very good one I read recently, simply called "The State of Africa." Martin Meredith. He was one of Nelson Mandela's biographers. That's very, very good. Gives a real um, astute insight into Africa. Um, I went to India recently as well. A lot of great books about India. Obviously, V.S. Naipaul. His book on India is well worth reading. He's again, some of his observations are so astute. Um, so yeah, I think Meredith's book is well worth reading on Africa. I think I was really impressed by that. I think it's a great example of someone who takes it upon themselves to write a narrative history of a continent. And very insightful, uh, very very empathic as well.
I'd say virtually impossible to write about a continent.
He possibly is,
Well,
possibly
in
is.
Nigeria alone, there's so many different thousands of languages. I couldn't understand how one could begin to even get beyond that to the continent
Yeah,
level.
yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Yeah, there is. You could even argue that the boundaries of the states are so artificially created, um, that they belie these linguistic cultural differences, and that's true.
Mm, yeah. I remember reading as part of a sociology course I was doing.
Yeah,
I think it was kind of like Sociology 101 that you learn about the difference between the rural and the urban environment and the difference between the extended family and the nuclear family dynamic. And they gave us an excerpt from Nelson Mandela's autobiography, and he described polygamy, but in a very reputable and honorable way. So it's hard to hear polygamy discussed without it having negative connotations. But the reality for him was that his father had six wives, and they were spread over such a huge geographical area that those wives wouldn't even know of one another. And his father was a highly respected figure, so he could go to any of the places where those wives lived and each one of them would treat him as if he was their son. So it was like having six mothers. And he said he obviously had a special bond with his biological mother, but the way he was treated by each of his father's wives was the same. They all treated him with huge respect out of respect for the father. And this extended family model could easily survive the death of one or two individuals, when you're living with your aunts and your uncles and your brothers and your sisters and their relatives. Whereas the nuclear family model, unfortunately, suffers, if you've got man, wife, and 2.4 kids and a cat and a dog, if anything happens to one of them, it's a blow which is very difficult to recover from. So we learned a bit about Nelson Mandela's sort of upbringing and his experience of his father's many wives, but in the context of the extended family's capacity to survive trauma and loss.
Yeah, no, no, that's interesting. I think what I take from that, what I've observed there actually is possibly why is that it was sustainable because of the kind of geographical and sociological contingencies, like the fact that they were spread across a vast area and there was very little communication. And I'm just wondering, could that be sustainable in the modern world when there's such easy communication and we're just so interconnected through digital devices and everything else?
Right,
And I suppose that we're more subject to um, these technological, sociological, historical contingencies than we might like to admit. And the nuclear family probably has evolved to suit the needs of this particular historical context.
so before we get into the sort of nitty-gritty of advice for would-be writers, what would you say has been your sort of biggest challenge in life? What has been I suppose the most something you've had to overcome? What has been your biggest challenge in the respect of your journey so far?
That's another deep one, Carl. I can now see where the
I'm glad you
psychology
like my
background.
questions.
Yeah, they're very good questions. They're very good questions. They're kind of a little bit disarming. I wasn't expecting them, but that's good. That's good. Again, like I said before, I think the good questions are tough questions. Well, without getting too confessional about it, we don't want to turn it into sort of performative psychotherapy or something like that. But I think to tie it in with the business, I think setting up a business is actually quite tough.
Right,
I think the whole experience of starting out as a freelancer, offering yourself is itself quite daunting. And you have all sorts of psychological and sociological impediments.
right.
Um, and then scaling it up, working with people, factoring in longer hours, factoring in more risk, more financial risk. I think that whole process of building a business, and it's still in the process of either growing or fluctuating or whatever.
Yeah, and do you know what? I appreciate your honesty there. I love working with my right coach clients around the world in the evening time, but by day I have a day job where I speak to business owners up and down the country
Really, yeah, of
and
course.
financial controllers, and
Yeah,
successfully running and managing a company is a huge challenge. Yeah,
it is. It is. And I think for people like myself who are probably a little bit reluctantly, are reluctant entrepreneurs, for want of a better term, who have maybe a natural shyness, a natural diffidence, probably are a little bit more adapted to work in a salaried uh, profession or something like that, and not sort of work for themselves in self-employment, they can be, you have to have overcome those psychological obstacles in addition to all the other obstacles that the process is going to throw
Right.
at you. So I think there's probably definitely to answer your question, there is. I think that would be the answer to your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Fair enough.
it's just that would probably be. I wouldn't say it's the biggest, not necessarily the biggest challenge, but it has been it is a challenge. It's a challenge that might that probably would resonate with some of your viewers, your listeners, because uh, there is some kinship in writing a book and setting up a business as well, of course.
Well, we're out of privacy and respect. I don't want to mention names, but I'm working with a gentleman at the moment who is an advisor to business owners.
Okay.
And his book is not only just a compilation of his kind of wisdom shared through platforms like LinkedIn, but also some of his experiences mountaineering. And this
Yeah.
analogy between climbing a mountain and running a business is particularly valid once you start to scrutinize it in a little more detail.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would be hugely interested in Peter's book once we're finished writing on that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds right up my street. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
Absolutely.
great guy too. So tell me, when it comes to recruiting the advice of an agent, who like do you have a typical client or do you help all kinds of would-be writers or what what really would you be able to do for a writer and an author? How could they benefit from working with you, we'll say?
So yeah, that's a good question, Carl. So there probably is a typical client. So there's the average of the clients that I've worked with, and I can profile them pretty accurately. But in saying that, there's no like I would say I can help virtually every author to some extent. And if there's any author there who's in the process of writing a book, I'd be confident enough that they would have some benefit of talking to me. Um, because
That
I
doesn't
can.
help your marketing if you just say anyone. You've got to kind of
It
home
doesn't. No,
in, don't
it
you?
does. It certainly doesn't help the marketing. But taking the marketing hat off and just answering it honestly,
Yes.
I think because I think I can advise them generally on what route to take, what services to avail of. If we could help them either with high quality editing, either with the publishing package if they're into self publishing, uh, I can advise them on that. So it's the first to part of your question. I think is generally. I think almost every author I think would benefit to some degree of having a discussion with me or one of the team. The second part of your question I think was more general of how we specifically can help. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think if it depends on the stage of the manuscript is in,
Okay.
but if certainly initially the editing services are very important, and I would always encourage authors, regardless of what their preferred publishing route, is to engage an editor. It's always beneficial because having a professional appraisal of that manuscript, getting a professional editor to read that manuscript from cover to cover and analyze it, give feedback on aspects like storyline, plot, dialogue, writing style is invaluable. It's invaluable because in professional editing, there's tools that are used that, for example, with our developmental editing service, I always emphasize the feedback should be relayed constructively. So this is a common misconception. A lot of people feel that an editorial appraisal is like uh, uh, a, a very gratuitously critical critique of the book or something like that, where the editor is just finding holes here, finding mistakes here.
Right.
That's not the process at all. The At least when we do it, the developmental editing appraisal, an editor takes the manuscript, reads it carefully, highlights both what is working and what is not working. That's key to the editing process. So you highlight what is working in the manuscript, what is not working, and then you relay that constructively to the client. So you do it in a way that's constructive, that's positive, that's solution focused. So that process of working with an editor is invaluable if you're an author working on a manuscript.
And so for me personally, whereby I set out with the intention of self-publishing to retain control over pricing and control over contents. Do you have clients that are more oriented towards self-publishing, or would they tend to be more oriented towards going the, I suppose, in inverted commas, traditional publishing route?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, Carl. And I think there's two sides to that. Like there's with regards to whether a book should be self-published or it should be published via the traditional route. It really depends on the author. It depends on the book, and it depends on other circumstances. So there's no clear answer to that question. Some books, the self-publishing model suits perfectly. Give you two examples. We've worked with corporate histories of sports clubs and so forth. The self-publishing model suits that perfectly. The market is low but very committed, very passionate. The the editorial control is very important because this is going to be a branded corporate product. The corporation or the club want their branding on it. So editorial control is very important. They usually have ways of generating the income for it. They can do fundraising within the club membership, or they might have a marketing budget they can draw from if it's a corporation. So the for that type of book, the self-publishing model works perfectly. Um, Again, there's some very niche.
Okay, let me
Uh,
tailor that question more towards. I'm going to be selfish here and tailor it more towards right coach clients because I'm not working with people that are writing about GAA clubs and stuff.
yeah,
Let's say my kind of people, the people that I'm working with, are more on a journey of self-development, a journey of healing, and a cathartic process whereby they're writing about their life experience, should we say, narrative non-fiction. And typically, what I find is your traditional publisher would sort of groan at someone who's not famous and just dismiss it as memoir. Whereas it's an important personal story to that
yeah,
person and is hugely inspirational to others, but not a financial benefit to an organization that needs to sell
yeah.
that book for profits. So, is it possible to support those kind of writers through self-publishing, or is it unwise of them to go looking for traditional publishing methods if they're not well-known people, we might say?
Yeah, no, that's a very good interjection there. That's very honest, and I think there's a lot that makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot to that, to be honest. Um, firstly, I think if done, just let me just say this firstly, if done correctly, both traditional publishing and self-publishing can have very good results for authors, if done correctly.
Can they go from one to the other? Is there any cases where somebody self-publishes and then obviously it gets picked up by a publishing company?
Yes, there have been examples of that, yeah, and that's always a possibility. And I'd always counsel our writers to focus a lot on the writing and be open-minded with publishing possibilities. There's many ways
Sure.
out there to reach readers, and I would never be partisan about publishing, even though the majority of our books, the majority of our authors do self-publish. I wouldn't be partisan. I would always encourage the author to do what's best for them. So there has been many examples of books that have been successfully self-published. The author self-published them, and publishers have subsequently acquired the rights either to the book that was self-published or to follow-up sequels. So that has happened. There's been some very good examples of that. Uh,
So is it fair to say an agent might be perceived as someone that can help you get a publishing company on board
yeah,
as opposed,
in publishing speak.
yeah.
And now the way I view this business is a startup, so it's a little organic, it's a little bespoke, and the way I've used agents has been somewhat idiosyncratic. But in the traditional publishing speak, a literary agent's role is to identify uh, promising authors and first twofold. Firstly, to identify promising authors and manuscripts and represent them to publishers. So their role is to provide publishers with promising books, and secondly, to manage an author's career. And now that's been probably the two traditional roles agents have performed in the publishing world. So certainly their traditional role has been to link authors to traditional publishers. Yeah. But you did say, look, you've made a lot of interesting points there. And now, while I say, that when done correctly, and again, I'm proud that we've worked and the quality of the self-published books we've produced, and we've worked with some exceptional authors. So, self-publishing can be, when done ethically, transparently, and professionally, can have great results and produce some really, really great books that are well worth publishing, and likewise to some great traditional publishing houses as well who do fantastic work. So, when done correctly, both models are valid, but that's not to say there's not limitation. There's not ways to improve. And you hinted at it there. There is a focus on name recognition and celebrity authors in traditional publishing at the moment. There's no doubt about that. And I find it interesting with the authors you're working with that actually categorizing them as memoirs, and again, the industry is a bit obsessed with categories. Categorizing them as memoirs is almost depreciates the process they've went through, which is a very cathartic one, which is not, correct me if I'm wrong, not autobiographical in the sort of promotional sense, but is really more about writing about their life story for the purposes of that catharsis. And a lot of biography, a lot of memoirs, autobiographies, biographies are about um, self-promoting a life. And I think this is not the promotional mentality at all. This is
Yeah,
about,
I find that the clients that I've worked with over the last 5 years, if there's one thing they all have in common, it's a huge amount of courage
yeah,
to be able to sit down and look at what they've been through and then share that. And in a lot of cases, there's narcissistic abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of, mostly women in the beginning, but recently now it's more men and women that have come forward. And every single person I've worked with and had the privilege of serving has struck me as a very courageous person. And it seems to be the human paradigm that we have things to overcome. And the vast majority of people are kind of like, blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
they don't want to look at it, they don't want to hear it. But some people say, right, okay, let's look at this and let's talk about it. So my service is very kind of confidential and I'm proud to have this kind of safe space and this safe environment. And I would love for, shall we say, the first edition of a lot of stuff to be the end product. But of course, second draft and third drafts get edited and amended to
yeah,
avoid lawsuits. And I, it can be very sort of nuts and bolts and raw and honest and telling it like it is, and not really a marketable product as such, you know?
Exactly, and I can't like I don't have well, I don't have the data to back this up. I would strongly suspect that self-publishing, again, when done correctly, can have a disruptive effect, a positively disruptive effect on the industry in respect you're getting stories out there that are a little bit raw and haven't went through the industry filters. Some filters are good, and we provide a lot of filters with the editing services so that the authors get the opportunity to work with professionals, and that gets the professional standard up. But I definitely think when it gets into the commercial filters and marketing filters, that bypassing them can be a positive. And I think that's probably where an example would be these stories you're working with, which sounds and I know from experience are really you deserve an enormous credit for getting them out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be nice to see where our respective services dovetail nicely. And it strikes me that you would have dealt with and worked with quite a wide and broad variety of clients. Yeah.
Yes, they come from all walks of life. It's remarkably eclectic, and particularly the agenting I've done is more um, is more specialized. But I think with the authors I've worked with the book publishing package specifically, which is our package for self-publishing authors, it's a wonderful variety of authors from all different backgrounds, from all different walks of life, all different types of books.
Can you put into a nutshell what advice you would give to anybody who's contemplating whether to self-publish or approach a publishing company? What criteria should they be really bringing to bear when it comes to making that call?
That's a very good question. So I think I'd weigh up the pros and cons of both. Also, you can try both. You can try. The first thing I would say is the rules are the same up to the finished manuscript. So if you're working on a manuscript, you need to get it to an exceptional standard. So you can work with an editor, you can contact us, and we can put you in the right direction there. So that's the first step. You need to get your manuscript up to an exceptional level. So the rules are the same for both. Either if you're proceeding to self-publish, and again you can partner with us in that, or you're submitting it to agents or publishers. You need to get your manuscript up to an exceptional level. Now, as regards self-publishing versus traditional publishing, there's no law. You can try traditional publishing first, um, and self-publishing can be a fantastic um, option if that doesn't work out. But as regards weighing them up, pros and cons, um, firstly, with self-publishing, there, just to do for diplomatically, one real positive, one slight negative. So one real positive is the editorial control. So if it's something very personal to you, it's a memoir, family memoir, a very personal story, a corporate history, a novel in a very niche uh, cultural sphere, and you just having that editorial control is enormously empowering. Is a lot of
Maybe
freedom.
something that's not politically correct, we
Yeah,
might say.
exactly. That's another yeah, that's another example. So that's a big pro. The negative there, the flip side is that the author takes the financial risk with self-publishing. Again, you'd have the assurances working with us that it's professional. We can guarantee the quality, but the financial risk would be taken with the authors. So that's a pro and a con to self-publishing. Traditional publishing, you can apply the same evaluation. A big a pro, a positive would be that at least theoretically, the traditional publisher takes the financial risk, so that gives peace of mind to the author. Um, a negative, then the flip side is you lose editorial control, you lose freedom. You would assign the publisher a license, and part of that license, they would have the final say on the cover artwork, on edits, and so forth. So again, a positive. You again theoretically and ideally, if the publishing house is good, they bring a lot of expertise, particularly in the post-production phase. So again, we could provide yeah, where we can provide skills as good in the editing, design, printing, but in the post-production, when it comes to distribution, when it comes to publicity, that's where a good traditional publisher have both the budget and resources to really make a difference. So
That's a good
again,
point.
there's
Yeah.
negatives probably to that too. But so it's a case of evaluating both, weighing up the pros and cons, and also adapting them to your own needs. Every author is different, and for some authors, some prose are going to are they're going to reflect differently depending on the author.
I met recently with famous Clare-based author, originally a Kerry man, Eddie Linehan. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know Eddie.
I've never met him personally, but of course I know he's iconic, really.
Right.
You
So,
know,
so I had the pleasure of meeting him. I picked up a few of his books.
yeah,
Shout out to Eddie if he's watching. I don't think so. He's a confessed technophobe. I think
yeah,
email
yeah,
is as
yeah,
far as it gets with him. He said that for one of his books, the illustrator cost 30,000 euros, and that bill was paid for by the publishing company.
yeah,
And there, you're talking a different level to the kind of level I'm at with my clients, I think, for sure.
yeah,
But what he was illustrating, no pun intended, was that his it wasn't his financial burden to bear to find the cost of, someone that could do the illustrations
yeah,
for him. And it's something that the publishing company takes on, and I'm thoroughly enjoying reading more about Eddie. My Irish vocabulary is slim at best, but I'm learning words like Amadorn.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everyone who went to school in Ireland will know that because the teachers would often use it in school.
Amadorn
Yes.
Moore. Yeah.
Yeah, a big fool, not just an Amadon Moore.
And Buchel. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that point is a good one. Some of the conglomerate publishers, and by that I mean publishing houses are subsidiaries of large multinational media organizations, whether that be News Corp or Paramount or Bertelsmann or whatever. When they're subsidiaries of these, they have financial resources that are just well beyond the means of either self-publishers or indie publishing houses, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
But in saying that, if there is somebody out there that is thinking of self-publishing an illustrated book and are just frightened by that figure, there are other options that you can get quality illustrating within budget. But certainly top illustrators that have um, that have a record with publishing, you know, books for conglomerate publishers can charge those kind of fees. But if there's someone frightened by it, there are other options.
Tell me, it's virtually impossible to have a chat around the pros and cons of self-publishing and traditional publishing without mentioning either AI or Amazon. How has the likes of Amazon and AI impacted upon your business? And what have you seen in the last sort of few years in terms of the changes in the landscape of the publishing environment?
Yeah, they're both very good questions, Carl. They're both different. Like Amazon was around when I started, so I've kind of grown up with Amazon,
Yeah,
and it has changed the publishing landscape significantly. I think it's actually made self-publishing easier in some respects because you
yeah,
can avail of firstly their print on demand service, which while not perfect for every need, is certainly wonderful for convenient sales. So it reduces the necessity of holding stock. For people who are not familiar, what I mean by a print on demand is that when the book is ordered on Amazon, if it's linked to their KDP service, it's printed for order. So if somebody in Australia buys the book on Amazon.com or something, or somebody in Canada buys it on Amazon.com, it's printed locally to them and posted to them. And for some books, although not all, for books that are predominantly text, the quality is solid. It's respectable.
Yeah.
For illustrated books now, it can be a little bit dicey, but that has been help. That is helpful, and it's there, and it's hyper convenient. We always advise our authors to actually do both, to both have high quality printed stock, which they can sell at their book launch or at local retailers, and then also use the Amazon and Ingram print on demand platforms
So
because
it's
they're
very much a commonplace part of the service that's there. With AI, I guess it's more, is AI making the likes of yourself as an editor and an agent or myself as a writing mentor, are we kind of more redundant with the introduction of AI? Can people command AI to write paragraphs? Like obviously I love the way the nature of the work I do with my clients is very personal to them and it's authentic. Authenticity is huge, but there's an aspect or an element to which AI as a tool can still support that, you know?
yeah, again, that's a really good question. I think that's quite different. Like I didn't grow up around AI, that wasn't around at the level it is today, unlike Amazon. I think there's a few things. Like firstly, I don't think it's unique to this industry. I think while you can certainly argue that AI can edit, it can appraise, it can ghostwrite. AI can also do code for software. AI can provide financial consultancy. AI can do a lot of STEM work. It's not just uh, intruding on the sphere of humanities work. It also has a potentially adverse effect on STEM work as well. So it's not unique to this industry or other creative quote unquote industries. Um, I think it's hard to know how it'll evolve. Carl, to be honest, I think the jury is still out. I would be on the
You can spot AI written manuscripts a mile off, I'd take it.
you can spot AI and not often not so much the actual substantive content, but stylistic giveaways like ChatGPT loves to use the long American im dash, which is loves
Is that
creating
what we used to
parentheses with
call a
dashes.
hyphen?
Yeah, the hyphen is a little smaller, but the im dash is more of it's more characteristic of American style guides, I think. Whatever the case is, you can spot that's a telltale sign. But my own feeling is, look, we'll have to learn to live with it. I think it'll change what we do rather than dispensing with us. And I think authors should be smart about AI. To put it, and we can talk more about this if we have time or if you want. But I think what they should do is cautiously embrace it, accept it's going to be around, and adapt to it.
Hmm.
Because I think when there is a technology that can do things, can create efficiencies like this, it's a losing battle to fight it.
I'm gonna just put in a cheap plug for my own book.
There you go. Yeah,
The power of the written word. I don't know if you can see that.
it's kind of going in and out of resolution, but I can see it now. The
I don't know
lovely
why it
quill on the
does
cover.
that. Does that work?
Yeah,
The 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 text inside the cover is 100% author content. It's written by me and authentically so, and I'm proud of that.
yeah.
Cover, however, was designed by my partner Dee, and she used AI to help her create the cover. So it's almost like there's a skill in being able to harness that tool, and I loved the way she created what she created, but we couldn't have drawn it as such. It's kind of like an AI generated image. But the skill was in instructing the AI with what to do and then seeing what examples it had. And for me, that was an education because I was quite resistant to using it at all, you know?
Yeah, I'm the same, and I've went through a similar process. Now, I think at the moment it can't either edit or create or generate art cover artwork to this level which a human can do, but I think it is going to get better. And but I do think there'll always be a role for professional expertise and skill. I think in an ideal world, or in the more likely scenario, I would actually say that the it'll be a combination of both. Now, in saying that, I do think you will have a situation maybe in I'm not even going to put a time limit on it, but you will probably find completely 100% AI generated content. Um, and they'll be cheaper than the human generated content. I think it could even become a bit like the fashion industry today, where if you want a new overcoat, you could probably get a reasonably priced overcoat that's made in China with synthetic fabrics in a high street or discount store. And if you wanted the real luxury tailor-made coat that's made in Europe with high-end fabrics, you pay a premium for it. And I think a similar dynamic could happen.
That's fair
There's
enough.
also the
Yeah.
scenario which you suggested that there's a combination between both. Um, but I think presently I think that design and editorial skill and expertise are invaluable. Um, even if the professional is using AI tools um, to refine and generate, whether to generate IDs or to refine the cover, I think, or refine the text.
So
I think
thankfully, it doesn't quite make us redundant because you still need that human element, right?
I think so. Well, like look, it's all speculative. You don't know. I would certainly argue that the interpersonal connection isn't replaceable. Um, you can certainly make a claim that there's just a dynamism and like an understanding of context that the AI won't get, because
No.
the AI isn't consciously aware of the context. So that quick responsiveness to context isn't something you can replicate in an AI. AI can truly understand humor, can understand irony. Um, but again, I think
Sounds
generally
like some
speaking,
humans.
some humans can't either. Sure, sure, definitely.
Tell me, I've got a couple more questions before we look to wrap up. Uh, one, have you ever written your own book?
No, I ghosted a memoir with a client before. We worked together on the book because I did some journalism, and I did write a bit in college, so I did have an aptitude for it. But I did, yeah, no, with a
I must say
client,
you look far too young and you're probably far too busy to be writing your own book in terms of an autobiographical sense.
yeah, at the moment anyway, but never say never. But I did enjoy that process, and I wouldn't be adverse to trying something again. But again, I'm time poor at the moment, and there's a lot of things on, and just fitting that in, either working with an author or writing under my own. I'm not sure I can fit it in, but I did enjoy the process. Yeah.
I've spent most of this last year in 2025, doing book launches around the country and having to become comfortable with the uncomfortable process of public speaking
Yeah.
and facing crowds. Have you done any public speaking? How do you feel about that? Are you a good public speaker?
So yeah, public speaking is comes a little bit more naturally. So I have got better at that. I've did a lot of that. So we typically, as part of the book publishing package,
Yeah.
the authors have the option of having me MC their book launch. For the authors who self-publish, I always encourage a book launch. I think it's a win-win. as you know yourself, and very impressive that you're doing a tour of book launches. That's very impressive. It just to generate sales. It's a big plus, particularly that initial burst of sales. It's also great for publicity. It's great for mementos. A lot of them authors, authors, their book is very personal to them. Often it is personal subject matter. It could be memoir. So it's great to family photos as mementos. At photos from the book launch. Yeah, speaking at book launches is something I do a lot of. I think we had about 5 book launches which I emceed last year. We had
Hmm.
12 books in total through the book publishing package, and 5 of them I emceed at the book launch. So that's something I have got a little bit of practice with, a good bit of practice with lately. All right.
That's a good idea. I never thought of getting an MC for my book launch. I just did it all myself.
Yeah, well, there you go. Maybe next time. Maybe next.
Yes, I'm planning to publish a book in 2026 called Turning Pain into Power,
Okay,
which will be something
okay,
as something of a follow-up on the power of the written word.
okay.
And I'm a very passionate advocate for mental health services and men's mental health in particular. And
Yeah.
a lot of the themes in the power of the written word were kind of overcoming self-sabotage, procrastination, and other sort of blocks that maybe come up that are related to childhood and family trauma and stuff like this. And so it's mostly all things I've had to work through myself on a personal level. But this idea of turning pain into power is quite specific to clients that have overcome narcissistic abuse
Mm.
and being convinced that they weren't really enough or they weren't good enough. And so this idea is very important to me to get the message out that you are enough just as you are, and that everyone has something to offer, and that everyone, their life matters and their story matters. And in a lot of cases, when it's captured and harnessed and written and shared, there's huge therapeutic and healing benefits to that process of writing as a healing tool and as spiritual beings having a human experience. I can't stress how important it is for people to consider, even if they don't consider themselves as an author or as a writer, even just making a diary or keeping a journal and writing about their feelings
Yeah,
and what they're going through, just in a day-to-day way of coping with the world that we live in, you know?
absolutely. That sounds very interesting. And yeah, I would love to talk to you closer when that's more advanced.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and it brings together a lot of what we've talked about in this discussion, actually.
So all that remains really is for me to thank you for your time. How can people find you?
So I pride myself being very accessible.
Hmm.
You can find us at our website www.jm.agency.
Two
All one.
seconds there now. I'm just
Yeah,
going to pull that
you
up. Let's
please
have a look
do.
and see. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's our website. Now the website is going to be redesigned in the next month or so, so we'll have a new website. But at the moment, you can go on our website, book a
Yeah.
consultation with me.
Okay.
You got testimonials, you got a description about us.
You've got Joe Duffy there, Jeremy.
Joe Duffy, yeah, which I met recently at Annette Bryan's book launch, has always been very supportive of our authors. In fact, we had a book once where there was I was a crazy spike of sales from the interview Joe did on his he had an annual program for self dedicated self published authors. So he's a real loss actually to the self publishing industry, Joe. But yeah, so that's the website,
Very good.
and you see recent books.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really great memories of putting all of them together and getting them out there. And like I say, there's
And there's your
options. You can
contact
book
details.
consultation. You can email us. Yes, contact options. Follow us on social media. You got all the links there. Instagram, Twitter, RX, LinkedIn, Facebook. Phone as well. So you can, if you prefer the phone call, just give me a phone call. If you don't get me, you can leave a message. I'll get straight back to you. So we pride ourselves on being accessible. It's a very reified industry in some respects. There's a lot of inaccessible people who make a virtue out of being inaccessible. We make a virtue out of being accessible. So do if you have a book, even an ID, a manuscript, half a manuscript, just do reach out.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we'll put your details in the comments section underneath the YouTube video. Um, feel free to share that out there yourself as well. And hopefully we'll get chatting again soon, Jeremy. If
Yeah,
not, my own sixth or fifth published book. I've written a few now. I lost count.
yeah. No, you've already whet the appetite. So yeah, we'll definitely reach out and discuss that, Carl.
I think it'd be rude not to have an
Yeah,
official collaboration of some
yeah,
kind. And in the
absolutely.
meantime, I'd invite any of my current or future or present clients to reach out to you for at least a chat.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
a wealthy
absolutely.
mine of information, and
Yeah.
thanks so much for making yourself available to do the podcast with us this evening.
It's my pleasure, Carl. It's been great to chat with you. Fantastic to talk about publishing and other topics as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Take care, Jeremy.
Likewise, Carl. Look
God
after
bless you,
yourself.
sir.
I know. Take care.
So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or you'd like to be a guest, feel free to get in touch.